Good morning. Thank you for joining me again. We're in chapter 2 of Revelation, and we're just taking some time to ask each day, what is Jesus saying to us and how can I put this into practice? And we're in the letter to the church in Thyatira, and it says in verse 18, "To the angel of the church in Thyatira, these are the words of the Son of God, whose eyes are like blazing fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze." Now, knowing a bit of the background of Thyatira, they prize themselves on some very clever craftsmen. They had a guild of bronze makers, and so therefore they were well known for their bronze. And Jesus is speaking their language. He knows what's familiar to them, but he's reminding them that he is the one upon whom their eyes should be. Eyes like blazing fire, feet like burnished bronze, an image of strength and purity. It says in verse 19, "I know your deeds, your love and your faith, your service and perseverance, and that you are now doing more than you did at first." I love that, doing more than you did at first. When we looked at the letter to the Ephesus church, we can see that they had neglected to do what they did at first. But these people are growing. That's very exciting. They're growing in their love for one another. Now, verse 20, it says, "Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. I have given her time to repent of her immorality, but she is unwilling. So I will cast her on a bed of suffering, and I will make those who commit adultery with her suffer intensely, unless they repent of her ways. I will strike her children dead, and then all the churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds, and I will repay each of you according to your deeds. Now I say to the rest of you in Thyatira, to you who do not hold to her teaching and have not learned Satan's called deep secrets, I will not impose any other burden on you except to hold on to what you have until I come." Now, these are some very stark words from Jesus. He loves that they're growing in love for one another, but there is some serious compromise that's crept into the church, and it's the one of sexual immorality. And we can see here lots of figurative language that Jesus is going to put a stop to this. And the question really for us today is, what sense of immorality is sneaking into the church in our day? Well, lots, I would say. When we look at the Western world, we become more and more familiar with a sexualized society. We can just see in the way adverts are being done, the way that children are responding to media. I think it's quite worrying. If I look at my daughters, the way that they are engaging with media, what they get to see, I think often there's a real sexualization of society and even young children going on, which is very sad. An objectification of women and lust being used as a way to sell products. Now that's not good. Even in the way that we watch TV, so many of the series that are currently on Netflix or Prime or other ways of streaming media are just filled with material that's not good. I was watching a series the other day, and I liked it. It was a good theme, and all of a sudden, very subtly, you can just see two people getting closer together, ending up in a relationship, and you're kind of almost hoping they would get together. It's that sort of thing that's become normal as you're watching it, and all sorts of language that kind of crept into it. And I thought, no, I've got to stop watching this. This is not good. This is filling my heart with immorality. Not good. There's many other things that are creeping into the church. So there's a lot of debate going on about gender and same-sex marriage and relationships and divorce and other things. There's all sorts of compromise that's starting to enter into the church, where people are no longer seen as created by God and sex as a gift from God, but something to be used. And we got to be clear that sex was created by God for a man and a woman together in marriage. That's what the Bible teaches, and everything outside of that falls short from God's design. And when we take God's design in ways that it's not intended, we can be assured that it will cause harm and difficulty. So there's so many easy ways in which we can start to compromise, but I think so often it's subtly. We just don't stand against what's happening in society and go with the flow. So My question to you is, how can you live a life that is purely devoted to Jesus in this society that is so full of sex and sexualization and objectification? What is Jesus saying to you in this season? How can you live with a heart pure for him and not compromise on these things? How can you stand strong? Perhaps there are some things that Jesus is challenging on you on, that you've been watching that perhaps you shouldn't be watching, that you've been thinking that perhaps you shouldn't be thinking, and to help you to draw close to Jesus and how he has created us. It then says in verse 26, to the one who's victorious and does my will to the end, I will give authority over the nations. Who does my will to the end? Well, it's so easy to start to argue reasons why not and why we should or shouldn't do things. Well, in the end, it comes down to seeking to do Jesus' will. Are we fully devoted to do his will? Verse 27, that one will rule them with an iron scepter and will dash them to pieces like pottery. Just as I have received authority from my Father, I will also give that one the morning star. Whoever has ears, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So there's a promise when we stand strong that Jesus will give us authority and a future promise. So what is Jesus saying to us? He who has an ear, what is Jesus saying to you today? What's he speaking to you about, and how can you put that into practice? Take some time to pray that through together with Jesus, and then have a great day. Thank you for joining me.